v.h.s.x? What do you mean?
All right, everybody, welcome back to a brand new video. Today, I'm responding to a video from Prion, who actually discusses his theories as to why the survivor community really hates Kenneki nowadays. And if you want to watch the original video, he really gets into detail about the points that I'm making here. So I am mainly going to be focusing on responding to the points as I understand them. If you want to hear the context, obviously watch the original video. He gets into much more detail than what I can give here. So first and foremost, he mentions that, so he's talking about killers like Ghostface, Pig, Trapper, you know, whatever M1 that really doesn't have any sort of map traversal or anything like that. He's saying that the survivors are going to escape more and therefore they're going to have a lot more fun. I can definitely see that. I can definitely agree with that as well. I would imagine that people don't really hate going against Ghostface as much as they hate going up against Kenneki, mainly because of the different factors that Ghostface kind of comes with. So you already know that Ghostface has no map traversal. He has nothing for chase. He has nothing to make the chases any easier. All he has is an exposed status effect to apply, and he has undetectable. That's basically it. And he can crouch. Yay. So that pretty much doesn't matter, right? That pretty much does absolutely nothing for you against most players. Kenneki does, right? I mean, Kenneki is mainly focused on catching up and sort of circumventing a lot of those things that they like to do. And then that obviously would probably lead to less escapes, which actually touches on the next point that was mentioned in the video, which was that survivors enjoy the positive feedback coming from the chases. So that means that, like, if they make a decision, it actually works out. So if they were to hold forward or, you know, pre-drop a pallet or anything like that, they're usually going to be rewarded for it if they're going against Ghostface versus if they're going against Kenneki or whatever have you. Because Kenneki is a character that does directly punish the hold forward, the pre-dropping, the sort of mindless gameplay that survivors can really engage in, compared to Ghostface that may have to be forced to break a lot of pallets or may not be able to, you know, really cut down on the chase times pretty much at all, because holding forward and pre-dropping is going to be strong against an M1. I mean, that's just how the game is, you know, until they actually decide to buff him. And we've actually seen this also in, like, any survivor content. If you ever see any survivor videos, they usually engage in content that focuses on going against, like, either the low tiers, or if they are going against any high tiers, it's usually a high tier killer that really does not know how to play as effectively, and therefore would end up leading to an escape, or at least lead to content that focuses around doing what they find fun ultimately, which is probably escaping, right? So it kind of all ties back into itself. So another point that he makes is that, like, which is also something you see a lot in these survivor content, is like killers missing and being able to, like, dodge and stuff like that and kind of get away. As he describes it, sort of like a sort of horror movie chase where they are almost getting caught but not getting caught, that kind of thing. Sort of cat and mouse kind of thing. And that also makes complete sense. And we see that a lot in survivor content, and we actually see that especially when you do watch them go against low tiers. They'll most likely see like a tier 3 Myers like missing his swing or something like that, or you'll see a Ghostface like just whiff and it hit the wall or something, or whatever have you, or they'll get like bullied or stunned or whatever have you as the low tiers. And of course that ends up leading to less pressure for the killer, and then obviously more escapes for the survivor. It all connects. It all connects, and it makes sense, right? Now, he talks about what survivors dislike about going against certain killers. So he mentions sort of hits not really making sense. So not understanding how they were taking a health state from, like, sort of like how Kenneki, which is a tying it back into Kenneki can get hits on you that probably, like, it seems like it's around corners and things like that. And that he also covers that in the video, so he gets into more detail about that, and I agree with that. Especially when he first released, he was getting a lot of hits that were pretty far away, I will say. Like, I thought it was pretty hilarious when it released because it was just like so strong, you know, and it was actually really funny. He also brings up a point that I didn't really think of, but he mentioned that like obscure text that can lead to hits. So Wesker hug techs, like the sort of slides that Kenneki can do, like things like that. Things that we sort of understand that take multiple hours and hours and hours of practice and understanding and learning your character to even fathom getting those kinds of hits are things that, as killer players, I would say is probably one of the most fun aspects of playing your characters, but also one of the things that keep you coming back, and it's what sort of is one of the most interesting things about the S tiers, because there's no other killers that can do that. And some survivors hate that, right? Like, and you know, I do theorize that maybe if they understood like how long it really does take to actually, like, you know, learn it, maybe it would kind of reduce some of the bad feeling that you do get from kind of going down to something that they just really don't want, like don't understand. But for the few that survivor players that do enjoy kind of seeing that happen, like seeing a Wesker land like an crazy hit, you know, shout out to those people, man, because they should be as impressed as anybody else looking at the clip should be, because it definitely requires you to put in hours upon hours to try to just really be able to master it. And I can tell you right now that if I loaded up Wesker right now, like I would not be able to just land a crazy hug tech like any. He also mentions another point that he talks about choices in chase that don't really matter. So things that like trying to make a certain vault or trying to pre-drop and make some distance and things like that. And I would imagine even holding forward, which is something that Kenneki directly counters. I think that those are aspects that I would imagine the survivors probably hate, because you're not able to do those things. You're not able to get away with doing what they're used to doing, and because it sort of takes away that sort of power, I would imagine that sort of element that what used to work doesn't work against this guy, I think just sort of rubs them the wrong way, right? Like they're just not a fan. They don't like it. You know what I mean? And to me, I have to say that that's sort of just kind of what comes to the territory, I would say. Like, I wouldn't imagine a lot of killers are really able to kind of, you know, put on any killer and do the same exact thing, at least from my perspective. And countering killers is also a part of the game, and I think that being able to understand how to counter those things is a part of what does give some survivors something to learn. Because at least from like when I did play way back in the day, I felt like there really wasn't much to really understand, you know, and that sort of left me unwilling to really play any survivor even nowadays, because it just really doesn't really feel like I'm really engaging much with the game, because most of it is spent really with downtime. But on the other hand, that might also be why a lot of people enjoy it, because it's doesn't have a lot to worry about, you know, besides just doing a couple gens and saving your teammates and maybe going down pretty quick to try to buy your teammates enough time. And I think that maybe like that's what makes it so appealing for a more casual audience, I would imagine. And a character like Kenneki really does kind of shake it up. I even mentioned it back when he came out. Like, it really shook up the meta. It showed that a lot of survivors are really over-reliant on the same hold W sort of gameplay that works on a vast majority of killers. So it's good to see, and at least from a killer player's perspective, that they actually have to kind of think about what they're going to do instead of kind of just recycling the same plays. Prion does also mention that there are other aspects of Kenneki that, and even just with killers in general, that survivors may not enjoy. So like canceling, you know, the ability to go through pallets or to go through windows and things like that. And also the kidnap tech. So that I've heard a lot about, but if I'm not mistaken, I could have sworn that a dev did mention that was intentional for Kenneki to have. So I will trust the devs on that. If the devs want to say that is what they want in their game, I'll stand by it, honestly. If it does get removed in the future, you know what I mean, fine. You know what I mean, I'm personally fine with it either way. I don't think it really is really game breaking or like a tech, because if they're saying that it is supposed to be there, then I would imagine that that's what the devs want. So I'll respect it. But I can see that from a survivor's perspective, not being able to sort of use the same plays that they were doing before, and also feeling like they have no really any choice in the matter, I think is why they feel like they really kind of hate Kenneki because of it. And in my opinion, I think that is a positive thing for the game. You know, we want things that shake up the game, that keep it from being stale, and also force people to kind of make decisions that otherwise they wouldn't. And I think that overall that would make the game more interesting, and I would also say that it gives the Survivor side more depth, which I do in my personal opinion. I don't think that Survivor has much depth, in my opinion. I don't think that there really is much to learn, I would say, at least from when it comes down to the skill floor. And I don't imagine that the skill ceiling has a lot to work with, and that's also a part of why I just don't really find it as interesting to play personally, which more power to anybody who does enjoy it. And you guys can tell me what you enjoy about it in the comment section if you'd like. But for me personally, I just sort of prefer playing Killer, because there definitely is so much that I can sort of learn, I would say, when it comes to any killer. I feel like there will always be something I don't know, and that I find very interesting. So he does also mention that the kidnap tech is actually counterable, but the vast majority of the Survivor players may not know how to. He mentions that about a 1% of the player base, you know, that plays Survivor are probably able to counter it, which means that anybody who is not skilled enough to be able to do that, and anybody who's intentionally not trying to practice or improve at the game in general, may have a hard time, may also be leading to more of Kaneki's hate. That does make complete sense. I mean, like I've said, I think that Survivor is definitely a very more, like, the more casual between the two, I would say. So I would imagine that it would be a lot more enjoyable for more casual players. So that does make complete sense. And he does mention that, like, which is a very good point. He mentions that, like, survivors being injured, it can be very sort of terrifying for them. So he mentions that there's a lot of Survivor players that, when injured, really feel like they want to heal like as quickly as they can, because they feel like they're not confident, you know, enough to be able to survive, or maybe they just like really don't know how to really use the spacing to their advantage, or really understand the maps and things like that. And that could lead to a lot of hate going toward characters like Kenneki, which he also brings up, like Legion and Plague, who also punish like these survivors for being healthy a lot of the time. It does make sense that those characters are hated by those kinds of players that either are just very casual or just refuse to learn how to counter those characters, or how to be more confident within their chase. So that also does make sense. And Kaneki is definitely a very good example of, like, you know, he gets the first hit very quickly, just like Legion can. But what makes Kenneki more dangerous is the fact that he can catch up so quickly. So it does feel a bit more difficult for them to kind of get used to. It's usually a running meme that everyone always just kind of starts saying skill issue, which I kind of want to say to some extent, right? Because to a degree, I wouldn't imagine that no killer is uncounterable. I wouldn't imagine that there is any killer in this game that can win every single game, you know, forever. Like, there is going to be a team that can handle it, you know what I mean? Especially with a game like this. And we've seen a lot of people with, like, their streaks that end, you know what I mean? There's always going to be a team that can go up against it. But just like Blight, Kenneki also counters the whole W, which I touched on a couple times in this video, where, you know, that is usually the default that a lot of players will go to, instead of actually trying to go around the tile and actually trying to waste the killer's time. I want to know what you guys think about Kenneki's hate in the game. Is it warranted? Do you think that maybe he's overhated and he's actually perfectly fine to play against? What's your thoughts? Let me know. My main takeaways, I'll say, is I don't think that Kenneki is that bad in my perspective. Maybe he is quite strong, but there's other characters that are arguably even stronger. I mean, Nurse exists, in my opinion, which Nurse can quite literally go through walls. So, I mean, I don't think there's any killer that can possibly beat that in terms of strength. because they completely remove any of what the DBD has really been known for, which is trying to loop. So like, so I mean, that, at least from my perspective, is a lot worse if I were to guess. Kenneki, I would imagine, it's probably hard to go up against at first, and I think if dedicating enough time to it, I think you'd be able to counter it. And I wouldn't even say if he's even mindless either. I mean, I can load up Kenneki as well, and I probably would not be able to do half of what everybody can do with him. So that being said, thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed it, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to all the YouTube things. While you're down there, support the channel with the links. Consider joining the Patreon or becoming a member. Follow on Twitch to watch the Blade Killer live, and let me know your thoughts. I'll see you guys in the next video.